This is the
We Got It
podcast, and we are your hosts, Abby and Jonah, also known as a very chaotic husband and wife duo that loves to just yap in our living room about Michigan State athletics. And Jonah, it's our favorite time of the year.
It sure is. It's wonderful.
It's March. Regular season basketball play has come to an end. And we're headed now into really kind of like mini March Madness this week, while so many mid-major power conferences are having their tournaments to really determine who's going to get auto bids into the NCAA tournament, maybe finally flesh out those last few like bubble teams in or out, really determining a lot of the seeding for the NCAA tournament. So there's a lot riding on this week of basketball for a lot of teams. Some teams who have the chance to make the NCAA tournament probably for the first time ever. Wasn't Detroit Mercy, they have the chance? Or maybe
they're playing right now in second half of the Horizon League Championship.
Yeah, crazy. So just so much cool basketball going on. Literally at any moment of the day, I think you could turn something on and see good quality basketball. Big Ten tournament also starts tonight, which is crazy because it's Tuesday and the tournament goes through Sunday. So how many games would you have to win if you're a team playing tonight?
What, six?
Six? I can't do math. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, 6 games. That's wild.
Not happening, but
thankfully, that is not the case for Michigan State because they secured a triple bye in the Big Ten tournament and will face off against one of 3 possible opponents at this point on Friday night at the United Center in Chicago. And maybe my favorite part of all of this is that Jonah and I are headed back to the Big Ten tournament this year at the United Center back in Chicago, kind of your old like college stomping ground. So it's going to be really fun to spend the weekend there. And we're really excited to keep you. Hopefully, we're going to make up for lost ground earlier in the winter with so much illness and travel and all the things. We're going to have so many episodes coming at you this week. You're going to be sick of seeing us. Hopefully not. This is a good spot to mention that the We Got It podcast is an official podcast of Spartans Illustrated. We are so grateful to partner with them. We get to write for them, so we're both going to be having Jonah writes way more than I do.
Well,
yes.
I guess more.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say better, and I was going to
disagree
with that.
Also better. No. 100%. He actually knows what he's talking about. I'm just here for like the weird commentary, and he like makes me look good because he knows what he's talking about. Makes me seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, we're both going to be putting lots of content out from the We Got It podcast from Spartans Illustrated this week. So if you don't want to miss any of the fun, be sure to subscribe to Spartans Illustrated, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify. Wow, we haven't plugged this in a while. We've been bad about that.
Oh, yeah.
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a comment. Make sure that you have the little notification thing on, and our episodes will automatically download to your phone so you don't miss any of them. And if you love seeing us a lot, just keep your fingers crossed that the Spartans keep winning, because then we get to keep doing more cool.
The more they win, the more you see us.
Yeah. So maybe that's not good for some of you out there. But you're listening and watching, so hopefully you don't hate us. All right, Jonah. Regular season play is over.
Yeah.
Michigan State lost 2 to Michigan.
The Michigan.
Don't love that. But you know what? Big Ten tournament play is happening this week. And I think that's really what Michigan State needs to set their sights on at this point, because there is the possibility for a rematch again on Sunday. I don't really think I'm emotionally or mentally prepared for any of that. So we're not going to go there yet.
One day at a time.
One day at a time, which takes us to Friday, which is when the men's basketball team has the opportunity to face off against one of 3 options, right? So those options being Rutgers, Minnesota, and UCLA. Rutgers and Minnesota will face off against each other on Wednesday, tomorrow, correct? Winner of that game will then go to play UCLA. Winner of UCLA game will then go and play Michigan State on Friday.
It is like storming like crazy outside.
This is wild.
Right now.
I'm a little worried our house might just crumble.
So
it's an old
if
house.
It's loud and stormy, just know that March Madness is here and the storms are brewing.
Accurate.
So bear with us because we can't turn off the storm.
No, yeah. I'm going to just take it as a good omen that March is just being March, because this is very classic. Later on in the episode, we have been so spoiled to be joined by so many awesome guests. First, we had Jeff Kohler on, the father of Jackson Kohler himself. A couple episodes ago, last episode, we had the Matt Sheehan on of Locked On Spartans. That was such a fun episode. And then tonight, we are going to be joined by a very special guest that, for those of you who were tuning in last season, really got your, hopefully, like bracketology minds in order. We're going to be joined by Anthony Garvert a little bit later in the episode, so be sure not to go anywhere. Yeah, Jonah, let's just keep it super brief. Obviously, there's a lot we don't know about Big Ten tournaments. We don't even know who we're going to be playing on Friday. Talk us through what is like an ideal scenario for Michigan State this weekend. What does Michigan State hope to get out of this tournament? Is there anywhere we can really go, like potential seeding-wise, when we think about Selection Sunday, which is going to occur right after the last Big Ten game on Sunday? Like, obviously, it would be great to win the tournament and raise a banner, but maybe like outside of that, what are you hoping to see from Michigan State out of this weekend?
I think, like you said, outside of raising a banner, which obviously would be awesome.
Great.
There's a couple things, honestly, to me, and they might, one of them might be like superficial, not necessarily that meaningful.
That's okay.
But I feel like the other one is definitely meaningful. I think the first one, the way the bracket has kind of presented itself to us, like Michigan State obviously finished 15-5 in the regular season in the Big Ten. And how the bracket is, there's a potential that Michigan State, if they were to make it to the championship, could avenge 3 different losses on the season.
Interesting.
And obviously getting that revenge would be fun, you know, like being able to get that payback. But then also I think like maybe on a larger scale, like seeing Michigan State's ability to like adjust and improve in areas where they maybe were previously weaker could be a really good sign for this team. Thinking of the first round matchup, I think Minnesota is going to beat Rutgers on Wednesday night. And I think a lot of people probably know that UCLA has had a lot of struggles really like east of Arizona the last 2 years. Their only Big Ten win not in like
the West Coast
this season was Penn State.
Interesting.
They won 2 games early in this season, but their only conference win, I believe, not in Washington, Oregon, or California, was against Penn State.
Crazy.
So who knows what they're going to be like in Chicago this weekend. So I think there's actually a legitimate chance that Minnesota could actually beat UCLA.
So there's revenge matchup number 1.
Revenge matchup number 1.
Possible.
Right? And I think on a neutral floor with payback, like Michigan State would take care of business against Minnesota.
I have no doubt about that.
But they've been a scrappy team this year. That's why I think like a scrappy team
the chance to
playing against a team that hates travel. Like I could see very much Minnesota winning on Thursday. And then on Friday, if Michigan State will get there, the 2 seed on our side.
Saturday. On
Saturday, sorry.
You're talking about Thursday's matchup, Minnesota. Michigan State would potentially play Minnesota.
Right.
So rivalry matchup number 1, or revenge matchup number 1. Okay, second matchup would be Saturday.
So Saturday, they could potentially, the favorite or the most likely opponent would be 2-seeded Nebraska.
Dude, bring it.
Which I think that's a matchup that every Michigan State fan would want to see.
Right now, I think, honestly, I'm more mad about the road Nebraska loss than I am about the road Minnesota loss. Because freaking, what do we call it? The Tom Izzo Bermuda Triangle? Like, you knew that Minnesota.
You know that auto loss is coming.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm just still more mad about that. So, yeah, bring that matchup
Especially,
all day.
too, think of that game. That was a game that Devine was actually out for because he was sick. Michigan State turned the ball over a gazillion times in that game and lost by 3. Now, I think Nebraska's defense had a lot to do with that, just the way that they play. Yes. Especially to like one thing Nebraska loves to do is to trap ball screens and allow open shooters. And that really isn't something that Michigan State is incredible at,
especially
countering.
At that point in the season. We've had to work on it a lot in Big Ten play.
But I think that would be a game that Michigan State would really relish the opportunity to kind
Who
of
does
get.
Nebraska have to beat to be in that matchup?
So they would likely play the winner of the Purdue-Indiana game.
Interesting.
Which again is another game I could see going either way. Those two teams split throughout the season.
Purdue's been struggling lately.
Indiana's been struggling, so like it's going to be interesting. Like Indiana's also fighting for their tournament lives, so that could be interesting. So I think Nebraska will get past that Friday game.
Either way,
and I think Michigan State would really relish the opportunity to play Nebraska.
Absolutely.
And then on Sunday, like I honestly think the two most likely opponents for potential Big Ten championship would be obviously Michigan, which wouldn't necessarily be super thrilled about that. But then if it's not Michigan, I kind of have a feeling it's going to be Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Wisconsin
has this great ability to just really make me believe in them because they can they can do stuff like that, what they did to us, like just absolutely make us look childish on the floor. I mean, getting smacked. And then they can just be, quite frankly, absolute booty cheeks. Like, I just don't understand Wisconsin. And they manage to always, like, just get my hopes up enough that when they're in the NCAA tournament, I'm like, dude, I think they're going to go to second weekend. And they, like, just totally fizzle out.
But, so that's, I mean, you don't really, like, Wisconsin,
So really, there's, like, 4 potential
revenge.
Yeah. I mean, not all 4 of them could come true, only 3 of them, but there's 4 teams that could present revenge scenarios. Okay, so you were saying that's like, was that the superficial thing or the not superficial
That was like the more superficial thing that also could have like real world implications as far as just like Michigan State's ability to like adjust and improve in areas.
Yeah.
But the second area that I think Michigan State needs to do this weekend, this is kind of like the bare minimum I think they need to do, is, and I don't even know what the measurement is for achieving this, but like hold on to that 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. I know, according to the bracket matrix today, which compiles like 103 different bracketologists' brackets, Michigan State was a 2 seed, and I think like 99 or 100 of those 101 brackets. So like very much like everybody believes right now how things are. Michigan State's a 2 seed.
How close are they, though, on that 2 seed line, right? Because there's going to be 4 2 seeds. So are they the number 5 overall or the number 8 overall?
Most I've seen is the 7 overall.
So there's a spot to kind of give us a little bit of wiggle room.
With like Houston and UConn in that like 5, 6, and then Illinois in the 8.
That's so interesting to me. That's so interesting to me. I don't know why. I know Illinois has like the talent and they've done some cool things, but then I'm also like kind of surprised in some ways that with 5 losses in the Big Ten that we're on the trajectory that we are, right? Like college basketball is just weird. It's weird.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's what I think, Michigan State is holding on to that 2 seed, avoiding a 1 seed for as long as possible. And having that potentially easier matchup in the Sweet 16. I don't think any Sweet 16 matchup is going to be easy, but the more favorable matchup you can get, obviously, the better for Michigan State.
Yes, sir.
In my heart, I think a win on Friday, regardless of who we play, would have Michigan State pretty secure. But if a team like Nebraska or Purdue go on a run in the Big Ten tournament, they're kind of those top 3 seeded teams. They could very much jump the Spartans. But then again, like how much does this committee actually value those Saturday and Sunday games? So like I said, like it's not something to say, oh, this is what they for sure need to do. I would say if they win on Friday, they probably have a greater than 75% chance of a 2 seed. I would say if they lose on Tuesday...
Is this like a vibes-based 75% chance or like a numbers-based?
I mean...
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, just kind of knowing like the separation between these teams. I still even think if they were to lose on Friday, it would probably be like a coin flip on whether they're still a 2 seed. Because I just don't know how much the committee... values those Saturday and Sunday games.
And wins, right? Of like, is that enough to bump somebody else out who is deserving from other wins?
Right. Because you think of like best case scenario, those Saturday and Sunday games are just a tiny, tiny slice of a team's whole profile and resume. So like one game, which is like 1/32 or 1/33 of the pie, probably isn't going to be that significant of a difference maker. But it really just depends on just like how close.
And there's so many elements of tournament play too that it just seems like it would make it so tricky for the NCAA selection committee to put too much weight in those games. Like they're neutral location games. Oftentimes it's maybe the third time a team is matching up against another team from their conference, which I have no numbers behind this, but like it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. And you have no other situation except maybe like Maui Invitational or some of these November invitationals. Are you playing, back to back to back games with no days to rest in between? So I think there's just so many like unique elements where like, yes, it's awesome to be able to do well in your conference tournament. It's great to win and be able to hang that banner, but how much stock do you really put in this?
And I forget who it was. I'm bad, but Matt Sheehan, Locked On Spartans, actually had a guest, a bracketologist on, and they were kind of talking about this like factor of how much did that last weekend really come into play into brackets. And this bracketologist on his show said, looking back at the last couple of years, and looking at like when bracketologists say, hey, this is my bracket as of Friday or Saturday or Sunday. The average, like most accurate brackets were ones that were after the Friday games before the selection Sunday, and then Saturday, and then even less so Sunday. So that's why I'm saying like one win on Friday is probably enough for Michigan State to feel pretty safe on that 2 line.
Because nobody's getting more than like a triple bye, right? Like everyone is going to have to play at least 3 games to get to their conference tournament championship, right?
Definitely for like the power conferences for sure.
So like at that point, you know that you've got your top 4 teams out of the conference, right? Whoever wins that Friday game. Am I doing that math right?
Yeah.
So it feels like that's probably going to help like cement whatever you already know, or if you were on the bubble about something, you're kind of cementing it that direction.
But it
that's
also,
really
like Michigan State in some ways is at a disadvantage because the Big 12 and the ACC, they wrap up their conference tournaments on Saturday. So their top teams, their Friday games might be more valuable than the Big Ten semifinal
But also,
games.
does it save you if you lose on Saturday?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There's all the things.
Right.
We can try to know the mind of the selection committee, but how do you ever? I don't know what goes on in their minds. Every single time the bracket comes out, I'm like, what? Excuse me? And we're going to get into all of that next with Anthony Garvert at The Real Shardy, as many of you know him as on Twitter. So definitely don't go anywhere. And I'm going to shamelessly plug you here too, Jonah, because you have written this wonderful like bracketology article that you can find over on Spartans Illustrated, and you've been updating it regularly with all the outcomes. And it really will get into some of like what we're going to talk about with Anthony as far as like tempo-free statistics go, Bart Torvik, KenPom, looking at those and how the NCAA selection committee looks at those, and then also all the other kind of like resume, wins above bubble, KPI. What else am I missing?
Strength of record.
Strength of record. We talked about this on a previous episode, but go check out that article. I'll try to link it down in the comments too on this episode. Just if you want to understand a little bit more of like that whole conversation, he's the brains. Go read his article. Well, we got it, listeners. We are so overjoyed to have Anthony Garvert, the real Shardy himself, also known as the Analytics Guru, back on the We Got It podcast this season. And I'm super excited about the timing of you coming on, Anthony, just like heading into Big Ten tournament, heading into Selection Sunday, and then NCAA tournament starting the next weekend. Like, I feel like there's so much floating around just in national conversation, on TV, on Twitter, wherever you are, just about like all these different analytics things that get thrown out. And if you're like me, you like hear those things and it kind of goes like in one ear and out the other. So I'm just so excited to learn from you tonight. I think everybody is. Welcome.
Sure. Glad to be here.
So I know last year when you joined the show, we really focused the whole episode on tempo-free statistics. So things like KenPom, Bart Torvik, that, like Abby said, are kind of thrown around a lot when you're watching games or online, scrolling Twitter. And they really do have an impact on not only how teams are seeded and put in the tournament, but then also there's definitely some numbers and things that kind of coincide with like how far a team might be able to go, what their ceiling is, what kind of the prerequisites are for a champion. We won't go into like a super deep dive into that. I know if you're interested in a deep dive, check out our episode with Anthony last season. I think there's still a lot of good information in there. It's going to help kind of provide the context for this episode.
We'll be sure to link it down in the comments so you can find it easily, because I don't know what number it is from last season.
But maybe just like a 5,000-foot view of tempo-free statistics, KenPom, Bart Torvik, just that way people can have kind of a general baseline of like what that means and how it's maybe calculated.
So the main thing that these tempo-free statistics are measuring is your points per possession. So in a basketball game, your possession can end in one of three ways. You can either score a basket, free throws, a two-pointer, three-pointer. You can miss the basket, or you can turn the ball over. So all those things equate to points. And so you basically take the number of points you score and then the number of possessions you have. You divide one by the other, and that spits out a points per possession number. Usually it's somewhere between like 0.8 and 1.2, something like that. And then what a lot of these websites will do is they'll multiply that by 100 just to make it a little more readable. So when you see, per 100 possessions, no basketball game is going to have 100 possessions by one team. Usually it's in the 50s or 60s, but you'll see, 120, PP, like points per possession. And then what they do is you'll see that it's an adjusted number. So teams play at different tempos. Some teams will score a lot more points than others, but they might be more efficient in how they score points and how they allow points. So these advanced analytics sites basically take tempo out of the equation, and they also factor in things like strength of schedule. If a game is played on the road, that's given more weight. If a game's neutral, it's given like a middle amount of weight, and a game at home is the easiest. So it weighs all of those things as well. And then what it spits out is this adjusted number, both for offense and for defense. So a higher adjusted offensive efficiency is better. A lower adjusted defense efficiency is better. And then you subtract the difference between those two numbers, and that's your total efficiency margin. So the most elite teams are going to be the ones that have a high offensive number and a low defensive number, thus a big gap between the two.
That was like the most beautiful explanation, and I actually could follow every single step of that. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
So for my understanding too, so you're talking about points per possession, but then you're also talking about weighting based on like strength of schedule. The strength of schedule then is going into that adjusted offense.
Exactly. So there's like a raw number as well. They don't typically publish those because it's a little less valuable in the grand scheme of things. Someone who's played a cupcake schedule might look efficient, but when they come up against a team that's played a really good schedule, how do you predict those two teams against each other? So it tries to weigh that a little bit.
And really, too, like you mentioned, with those other factors like the location of the game, whether it's a home or away, adjusted to kind of like the strength of the opponent, it's really too a way to measure a team that have played vastly different schedules. You have so many conferences in Division One, and even in those conferences, not all schedules are equal, especially how big these conferences are. Like, you might only play one team at home or on the road, and it's going to be totally different than another team's schedule. So it kind of enables you to get a picture of how those teams might look on an even playing field. So with that in mind, kind of understanding the just bones of what KenPom is, what these terms, like these ranking systems that we use that are actually used by the selection committee, looking at Michigan State's profile right now, obviously regular season is over. There's probably not going to be a ton of adjustments in those ratings with so few games left. So what's kind of Michigan State's profile right now when you think of those statistics?
Yeah, so if you go across the board, most websites, a lot of them will have tweaks to each other's, algorithms, but most of them will roughly have a team in the same spot. So most pundits have Michigan State in the 9, 10, 11 range in terms of nationally for total efficiency margin. And then if you were to break that out by offensive versus defensive, the rough offensive efficiency is in the high 20s, low 30s range. So 28, 29. It changes so often. But last I saw was high 20s, low 30s for offensive efficiency. And then top 10 for defense, just inside the top 10. So 8, 9, or 10 ranked defense. So, very certainly better defensively than offensively, but both are, roughly in the top 30 at this point. And then overall,
so
top
a fairly
10.
Balanced profile, more or less. It's not like Michigan State's just relying on their defense or just relying on their offense, correct?
For a little while, they were leaning much more heavily on defense. So earlier in the season, they were closer to 50 or 60 on offense. And it's been over the last about 6 games, their offense has been pretty steadily creeping up. And so we're trending in the right direction on offense. And we're actually trending a little bit in the wrong direction on defense, but a little bit slightly. Like we were number 1 or number 2 on defense, and now we're down to 8 or 9. So still very good, but you can see it slipping a little bit given some of the higher level opponents that we've been playing recently.
I'm just thinking about those 6 threes that Kurtang knocked down against Indiana. Probably bumped the offense.
Yeah, we're shooting. So I looked it up. We're shooting 40% over our last 6 from 3. So much improved from deep.
Would you have believed that if we talked about that back in November, man? That's great.
I think anybody would probably take that number. I assume, though, probably the volume isn't super high compared to other teams across the country.
Yeah, 3-point rate's middle of the road. It's 150 or something. So not not good, not bad. It is. This is a team that likes to. This is a team that likes to get to the free throw line, though, so that helps even things out a little bit. But yeah, there are definitely more 3-point heavy teams that will get more from their 3-point offense than we do.
But on the flip side, if you obviously it's only a 6-game sample size, but if you can have that efficiency with maybe a middle of the pack 3-point rate, like you can kind of counteract how maybe little you shoot with the efficiency in which you shoot it.
Yep.
Because that plays back into the points per possession thing, right? If you're wasting all of these possessions with 3-point shots that don't go in, right? Like that would.
Yeah, and you'll see teams like Alabama that you look at their shot chart. It's a big cluster right around the rim, and then a bunch of threes, and they don't shoot any mid range. I feel like we spread it out a little bit more. We have more mid range. That's a huge part of Fears' game of late. So you've seen a lot of that from him. So again, it's not the most efficient shot, but if you can get it to go in and it keeps your points per possession up, that's what works for us right now.
And maybe I'm going a little off script here, but this is just something that I'm always personally very curious about, because I think there's a whole spectrum of basketball fans of just moving more towards getting your 3-point rate higher. And Nate Oates with Alabama, like you just talked about, I was just thinking about that, especially, last season going into the season, that's what they do. I'm just curious, from your perspective, Anthony, looking at a lot of the numbers, do you see teams that have this high, yes, you need a high 3-point percentage, but also with the high 3-point rate, that they are having better offensive efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, the other team that's shooting really, really well, there's a couple of them. So, both Iowa State and Illinois both shoot a lot of threes, and they make a lot of threes. And you see them on the offensive end, they're almost off the charts, some of these teams this year in this kind of offensive renaissance that we're in right now.
And I think that's something that grinds against my soul a little bit as a Spartan fan, because just, MSU's mantra, defend, rebound, run. And so it feels man, this should just be working. There shouldn't be another way that works. But I think that is the beauty of basketball, and especially heading into NCAA tournament where you're having teams from across the country who are playing in different styles. You really start to see where the rubber meets the road and which kind of tactics work or don't work.
I'm wondering, and again, if you don't have this off the top of your head, it's totally fine. But do you know like how Michigan State's like offensive and defensive efficiency compares to last year? Because I mean, obviously last year was another successful season, winning the Big Ten, 30 wins, making the Elite Eight. Like, I'm curious as we kind of go into March, like, are there any similarities? How do you have any idea of like what the difference is between last year and this year is?
Yeah, I mean, they're really similar. The one difference is actually the team this year is I'll say significantly better from three, but this team is average from three. Last year's team was pitiful from three. They were like 31% going into the tournament. They couldn't buy a bucket. And for how good of a free throw shooting team they were, it was a little bit mind-boggling that they were so bad from deep. This year's team, I would say that they're not consistent from three, but they are definitely an improvement from the previous year. I don't know if they're necessarily as good defensively, but they're still very solid defensively. So I would say slightly better offensively and similar defensively to last year's squad.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, I think that'd be encouraging for a lot of fans, just kind of wondering like what Michigan State might be able to do this season. And with kind of similar numbers, like you would think that a similar run is the potential for Michigan State this year. But it kind of makes me think, yeah, obviously we got the Big Ten tournament first, but thinking forward to the NCAA tournament, I guess let's start off by thinking like, are there certain like numbers or thresholds that kind of predict this is the kind of team that can win a championship? And then maybe we can go more specifically in how Michigan State compares to what maybe some of those metrics are.
Yeah, so there's kind of two layers of statistics you can look at. And one I would call like the intangible statistics, or like they're not actually stats, they're just like facts about a team. And then the other are like the more stats driven things. So the ones that are like intangibles is, do you have an elite guard? Did you win your conference or your conference tournament? Has your coach made the Sweet 16 before? Do you have an NBA first rounder on your roster? Are you a forward seed or better? And then there's another really obscure one. Were you in the top 12 of the week 6 AP poll? The last 21 straight have been in the top 12 of the AP poll week 6. That does include MSU, by the way. So just wanted to throw that disclaimer. So all of those stats are like they're not like advanced statistics. It's just kind of like a yes or no question. Right. Like you kind of rattle through each one of them, and you either have it or you don't. And then there's some other ones that are more stats focused. So, you started with KenPom. So looking at KenPom, it's pretty universally regarded that you need to have a top 25-ish offense on KenPom and a top 25 defense. And I think that's 24 of the last 25 have had that. I think you can widen the range a little bit, and then you'll get all the teams. And then you need to be shooting at least 35% from three. Last year's team did not hit that. This year's team, we do have that. Your strength of schedule needs to be above 33rd. You need to have a top 75 offensive rebounding. You need to be surrendering fewer than 47% on opposing teams' two-pointers, which MSU is like right on the cusp of. A low opponent free throw rate, 31%. MSU hit that one as well. You need to have a big averaging 12 points a game. That one's not necessarily as like you got to have it. And then having 4 players in double figures. So I looked at the list. There's like 15 of them, and it captures like every single one of them is like 20 or 21 out of the last 25. If you go through the whole list. So it's kind of amazing to see some of these trends.
That is, I think I heard one the other day too, where, and this is more kind of just on like not necessarily like analytically based, but like I think I saw it was like 24 out of the last 24 champions or something at least made the semifinal in their conference tournament. So teams that maybe tend to go home early in their conference tournament don't have the high-end success come March.
Which makes a lot of sense just from a like kid that grew up making my bracket from reading about teams in the newspaper. It was like, who's hot in March, right? Like who has had a good engine taking them into their conference tournament. Like maybe they didn't win it, but they really got hot and they started hitting threes. And so when you were saying we just have been averaging a 3-point percentage of 40% in the last 6 games, like to me, I'm like, okay, maybe we can be heating up a little bit. Like let's keep getting that consistent. And I think that's what makes me excited for Big Ten play is like, can we take some of that momentum and just keep steamrolling that way?
Right. And I think too, just thinking like of all those metrics you listed, like I don't have them all off the top of my head, but like I think like Michigan State's like either like on the verge of like being a yes, or like a definite yes.
Yeah. So I put together a matrix. There's 17 of them.
I love it.
I love it. I love matrix.
I'm not going to publish it, or I'm not going to like throw it up here, but like there's 17 of them. MSU has 14 of the 17.
Okay.
By my count. So it's a lot of the, and when you look at it, every national champion since 2000 has had at least 13. So that puts us in the mix.
Right. I love it.
Interesting. Well, that's a lot of optimism. So we're just going to end the episode right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony, for your time.
And Shane, we're winning it all. We're cutting down the nets. I can. There are 5 other teams that are above that threshold as well. I can list them off if you want, but you can probably guess them. Michigan, unfortunately, as well. Duke, Arizona, Florida. So those are all the 4 number 1 projected seeds.
Yep.
Us, the only number 2 seed that fits all of them, or the bulk of them. And the last one is actually a 4 seed. It's Kansas. They check a lot of the boxes, and they could get hot at the right time if Darren Peterson is healthy. So those are the 6 teams. If you're going to write someone to the middle of your bracket, pick from those 6.
Interesting. I guess I wasn't expecting Michigan State to be.
Yeah.
I think I expect them to maybe be more on that like second tier that can like maybe make a Final Four but can't win the championship.
Don't get it twisted. If you look at the advanced statistics, the first 4 that I listed, there's a big gap between them and the rest. And it's honestly the same problem that there was last year. If you looked at last year's bracket, that was a historically strong one line. And it didn't matter which one you got matched up against. You were in for a brutal draw. There really was no winning with that draw. And I think you're going to see a similar problem this year where you have 4 very, very clear-cut teams, and maybe UConn for a little bit, but they've kind of slipped down to the 2 line. The one line is as strong as it's ever been.
Yeah, you're interested you say that because, last year too, the Final Four was all one seeds. And like you said, with that gap.
I think is so rare.
Yeah, I think it's
only happened one time before in 2008.
Really? Really? I didn't even realize that.
Yep.
That's wild.
But thinking of like those baselines that you've mentioned as far as like you need to hit these marks. When you have maybe like an outlier season like last year or this year, it kind of muddies the water a little bit because like you said, there's this big gap between those top teams and the rest of the field. And I think I've seen like where Michigan State's like offensive efficiency would stack up or like rank in previous years. And from what I remember seeing, like Michigan State's offense would have ranked a lot higher with this current offense, like in previous years. But the offensive numbers especially have been just so astronomically high that they're ranked, 29th, 30th in the country.
You're saying if you had taken like this year's Michigan State team with the stats that they're putting up the offensive efficiency and compared it to 5 years ago, Michigan State would be in that number 1 seed line.
Or at least they would be higher than they would be more like in the teens or closer to the top 10.
I think that. So I think there's kind of 2 layers to that. So the first, I think the formula may have been tweaked this year because a lot of teams are higher. So I don't know if the formula was slightly altered to where higher offensive numbers are just across the board. So like I can't take this year's Michigan State team and plug it into 05 and expect the same.
Gotcha.
Also with that, everybody is up. So it's kind of like you still are having to defend against better offenses from other teams. So it's like, even if Michigan State's offense is up, they still have to contend with the other offenses that are also up. So it's like, even if you play that comparison game to other years, you really have to like compare it within the year it's at.
That's fair.
But I mean, it's a fair point. Like, and I think there is some truth that the offense is getting better. Scoring is up this year. Like, this is a higher scoring year. I think they're trying to do more, continuity within the game, like trying to have more freedom of movement. And so I think that's resulting in slightly more points. So I'm not exactly sure what it is. Again, you probably need to talk to someone whose job is advanced analytics rather than me. But that's just what I've kind of seen looking at the trends over the years.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, so you gave us with, all the hope with the intangibles. Why don't you take us on to the other side of things, maybe where things are, or maybe a little more realistic.
So a couple red flags on this team. The first is the lack of NBA talent.
Right.
Last year, actually, this is one I was like, oh yeah, we don't have one. But then Jace just went nuts and got drafted in the first round. So we actually had an NBA first rounder on the team last year. My question is, who is it on the team this year? Yeah. Not saying they have to get drafted this year, but someone needs to be first round good on this roster. And there are some athletes on this roster, don't get me wrong, but they're not NBA first, they're not getting NBA first round mock drafts right now. So that's one of the big, missing factors. The other is their defense has started to, particularly their interior defense, they've struggled with some of the bigger teams. So you look at how they handled Duke, you look at how they handled Michigan. They really started to falter kind of and down the stretch in those games, right? They didn't really have legs to finish off those games. And I think just some of those worries about offensive consistency, right? If you get stuck in half court offense and you can't get out and run as much as you want to, are you able to grind it out in half court? And I think there's been times this year, especially when Fears is not on the floor or he's, struggling with fouls or whatever, where he's not necessarily as aggressive as he could be, where I think you start to see this team stagnate and be a little bit more inconsistent. So again, there's high upside on this team. They are second weekend good for sure and very much in the mix for a Final Four. But again, you really have to be able to hang for 40 minutes with the top teams. And there's been a couple times where they've shown they can and a couple times where they've shown that they can't.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it, for sure.
I think one thing that we've said a lot this year is it seems like Michigan State's ceiling is high, but their margin for error is pretty low. So like you said, if a guy like Jeremy Fears is on the bench or in foul trouble, they don't really have a lot of options or adjustments they can make to still be an efficient offense.
And that margin for error got even smaller losing Divine because you don't have that extra buffer.
And with how heavily they rely on just pushing the ball up, fast break points. Like if you have a team that is able to get back after missed shots and defend the break, that also really limits Michigan State in what they do. So like on any given night, I think Michigan State can compete and potentially beat anyone. But like you said, like, are they going to be able to have the consistency and the right matchups to be able to do that for 4 or 5 games in March? I think that's just like, that's the fun of it too, is like waiting for Selection Sunday and then seeing, okay, this is the potential path and these are the matchups that would be better for Michigan State. And that's what I love all the bracketology and kind of envisioning those matchups, but you never know until you get that bracket in front of you and again, see how it breaks too, to like kind of know how realistic your shot really is at making a run based off of how it lines up for you.
So thinking about, I know we kind of talked about like the intangibles. We've talked about, where Michigan State is stacking up in some of these offensive, defensive efficiency overall ranking. When it comes to more of the predictive analytics, what is a profile or like a resume of those analytics that takes teams to the second, third weekend championship? Like, what are you seeing in those those trends.
Yeah, so credit to
that's the right way to
I follow the so Torvik actually has a really nice tool that basically lets you compare metrics over the years and tries to compare them side by side as best you can. So there's actually a couple MSU teams that it spit out in comparison to us, and I'll read off the years and what ended up happening. So the first one, and probably the closest to this team, is 2013 MSU. So that was Keith Appling's junior year. So Draymond had just left, and it was kind of his team. That team was 31st in offensive efficiency and 8th defensively. So almost a carbon copy of this team.
Yep.
Their rebounding was a top 30, both offensive and defensive. Shot 34.5% from three. Defended the three very, very well. Again, like looking on paper, I'm like, okay, I could blink and like, am I looking at this year's team? It looks very similar. That team made it to the Sweet 16 and ran into a two-seeded Duke team that they lost to. I think this team could go.
It's always Duke, man.
We're gonna end up in DC with Duke. I'm calling it now. Like book your ticket. Book your ticket to DC. That's where we're going. So
it's written in the stars.
But I think that that team was on the 3 line. I think this year's team could be on the 2 line. So again, I think we might be favored in a 3 versus 2 matchup.
That path a little easier.
A couple others that I've seen that fell in comparison as well was the year before that, 2012 MSU, top 20 defense and number 3 defense. So slightly better on both. If we had a really good Big Ten tournament, I could see us looking a little bit more like that.
Pushing at those numbers.
That team was a 1 seed, and they got upset in the Sweet 16 by a 4-seeded Louisville. But again, I think this is a second weekend team. I would say nothing is comfortable in March, but it's not a stretch to say, this team should be in the second weekend. But the third weekend, things have to go in their favor. And then the third team actually
start stretching a little bit for that.
So then the third team is actually 2009 MSU, which was 25th ranked offense, 8th ranked defense, top 10 rebounding team on both ends of the floor. Also, very similar to this year's team. That was a 3-seed team, and you know where they wound up. They wound up in the national title game. So,
crazy.
Again, it's anything can happen in March. I think the profile fits like somewhere in that Elite 8, maybe Final 4. I think if they get to a Final 4 and then they match up against, Arizona or Duke again, or Michigan or whatever, I think it's hard to keep winning at that level, but there's no reason to say this team can't be mentioned in the same breath among the other Final 4 contenders.
And I think that's encouraging. And it just goes back to what you were saying, Jonah, of like, I feel like the ceiling is high for Michigan State, but it's just variable.
Right.
Like, I felt like last year it was like you knew where the floor was and you like kind of knew where the ceiling was. And here it just feels like a little bit of like what team is going to show up, which is not great for my very like vibes and emotional driven sports watching self. Like, I'm probably the total opposite of you, Anthony, which is why we need you here. Thank you for being here. Because like a hard loss just has me not doubting the team. Like, I don't think I'm a fair weather fan. Like, I feel like a pretty diehard Bleed Green. But like just seeing a lot of the errors that we made in Sunday's game against Michigan, obviously the rivalry loss is always going to hurt and make me feel all the things. But it was really like, oh my gosh, if we make some of these errors, like I don't see us making it past the first weekend. So it's good to have some data to calm my emotions down, to help me make logical decisions when filling out my bracket. So these are all good things to like maybe consider taking Michigan State to the second weekend in your bracket. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think even like you mentioned, Anthony, I've been seeing too a lot of Michigan State in the East with Duke. And originally, if you asked me that 2 weeks ago, I'd be like, I want nothing to do with that. But Duke's been having some pretty significant injuries recently.
We played them close. We were right there with them. Right. I think the X factor for this team is what team shows up in the final 5 minutes. Right. I think MSU's 3 biggest losses, not biggest in terms of like margin, but just like their highest profile losses, the one against Duke and the 2 against Michigan, they were neck and neck with all 3 of those teams with 5, 6, 7 minutes to go. They were right there in each one of those games, or leading, and then they just kind of lost their legs in that last stretch. So like the team that shows up in that last 5 to 6 minutes is what's going to determine this team's ceiling and how far they can go.
And this, maybe you don't have the data behind it, but I love just getting people's opinions on things too. Like, to me, that seems like such a big contrast to Michigan State last year of like, right, strength in numbers, having a deep bench was like the identity of that team. And it was like, even if we can't, out talent you, like we can wear you down because we've just got a fresh body to put on you, which I think probably speaks to why we had that higher defensive efficiency last year, right? That's what we were talking about. It was just like you could just grind against other teams. And so I'm curious, just again, losing Divine, like seeing how some of that depth actually kind of shakes out headed into like much more intense as far as like back-to-back games or having a day between games. It'll be interesting for sure.
Definitely. And I think too, like it just also like how important is it for Michigan State to like try to raise the banner this upcoming weekend? Or would it honestly be better for them in the long run to not play 3 games in 3 days and be more rested for the NCAA tournament? So there's so many factors that could like affect how this team ends up doing in the NCAA tournament. And yeah, these 2 weeks are like the most fun of the year, almost just as fun as like the opening weekend of the tournament, like just the build up to it all and like seeing that first bracket and seeing how all these teams perform in their conference tournaments. As we kind of close, just curious, like any like final thoughts or any like you need to understand this about Michigan State or you need to understand this about
weird random statistics
NCAA tournament as far as like making your bracket or whatever.
So there's kind of two. So one, I wanted to talk a little bit about fears, like very briefly, just saying like you said something really interesting about this. The last team kind of wore people down. This year, I think what this team really needs or what they need to look for is someone who can make the right play and get the right bucket in those final minutes. And so it's not necessarily going to come down to like how much is Fears going to make shots. Like I remember the overtime game against Rutgers. He took over. He scored or was responsible for 31 points in the second half in overtime. Like that's the Fears we need to see in the final 5 minutes. And last year's team didn't really have a go-to scorer, like occasionally Jace, but like this year, Fears has to be that guy. And if that's the Fears we see in the tournament and in the Big Ten tournament, that speaks a lot to what MSU can do in the bracket. And again, guard play can do you wonders in the tournament, and he's the best point guard in the country, plain and simple.
I really don't think you can have the late, second half jump shots by Cohen Carr. As much as I love him, I adore him, but
ball's got to be in Fears'
shot
hands.
Selection and knowing who to go to in those moments.
So the last piece of advice I'm going to give, and it's not a great one. You can hear by my voice. There's a pretty harsh stat that unfortunately doesn't favor MSU. So the stat is when Michigan State wins at Chrysler Arena at U of M, the odds that they go to the Final Four are very much tied to the result of that game. When MSU has won at Chrysler, they are 8 for 12 in making it to the Final Four in seasons where they won at Chrysler. 8 out of 12. If MSU loses at Chrysler, they are 0 for 15 in going to the Final Four. And so this last weekend, when we lost at Chrysler, I was pretty reasonably bummed, and I think that's a big reason why is again, I'm not
Anthony's like, I know too much.
Stats are made to be broken, right? There's always outlier years. But if you're betting on your bracket, I would just keep that in mind as you're putting pen to paper. Again,
maybe second weekend.
It depends on what kind of MSU team we end up getting. Statistically, this team can hang with anyone. I think we can do it, but it's like I said, the one line is really, really strong this year, and it's going to be hard to overcome any of the 1 seeds that we get matched up against.
Yeah, and that is like just the beauty of the NCAA tournament and why I love it so much. Of like, you can learn all the things, right? You can have all the analytics, you could do all the things. And there's never been a perfect bracket. Has there ever even been a perfect bracket through the first weekend? Like March is just nutso, you know? And I think that is the most fun of, like, we talk all season about how we think these teams are shaping up, you know, in this conference, this side of the country, this side of the country. Oh, this team played this team and they beat them by this margin, but then, oh my gosh, they turned around and played this team and they got, you know, it's just, you don't actually know until NCAA tournament play happens. And I think I can't decide if I like love or hate Selection Sunday, because I think I just love like the anticipation leading up to it. And then it's almost a little bit like, dang, now it's out and I got to make decisions and I got to make a bracket and all the things. But it's the best part of March for sure.
Right. But we'll definitely cut out the part about the Chrysler Arena thing.
I never said it.
Our secret. And we'll have that knowledge for our brackets, but I don't know if our listeners need to know that.
Sorry,
part.
everyone.
We were just starting to like heal.
I don't want to be Johnny Raincloud here, but I'm also like,
No.
I pride myself on also, in addition to like, I love stats, I love getting really emotional about games, but I also try being real about like, okay,
Yeah.
if I hype myself like this team's gonna win it all, like, I don't know, I gotta reel it in just a little bit. So
Yeah.
you know, what I will say is the man standing on the sideline, as long as he's coaching here, we will always have a chance, right?
Yeah.
There's no one with more experience of the coaches that are there right now than he does. Mm-hmm. And with him, you will always see a fight from this team. They rebound hard, they defend hard. There's experience. There's upperclassmen. There's continuity on this roster. So that goes a long way. So I guess don't bet against the intangibles either.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because even in years that Michigan State wasn't seeded highly, think of 2015 as a 7 seed making the Final Four.
So much.
Even a couple years ago, I think they were a 7 seed again in Coach K's last year, and like hung with a Duke team to the very end that made a Final Four. And like there's always fight. Like you don't usually see Michigan State go down like without that fight. And once you have some of this higher end talent, like you have Jeremy Fears, an experienced back or front court, who knows what's going to happen. And that's the magic of March, is just that anticipation, and then just seeing really like they do matter, but then also like all bets are off. Like nobody cares what your KenPom ranking is when you're in the Sweet
actually
16.
on the floor.
Like
you know,
it just matters on what happens in those 40 minutes that is going to define you. So this episode has gotten me stoked. If I already wasn't stoked enough for March Madness, I'm stoked now.
Well, Anthony, thank you. I mean, I really can't say enough of just how amazed and impressed I am by you, that you can take these like very challenging concepts. I am not a person the only reason I made it through college statistics was because I just did exactly what my professor told me to do and I didn't understand any of it. And I just really appreciate that you can take these difficult concepts and like explain them in a way that I can understand, and I think that our listeners can understand too. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for joining us. We love having you on the We Got It podcast. We always like to close out saying go green, go white, go state. Well, lead us off. You want to close us out?
Yeah, let's do it. Go green.
Go white.
Go state.